Incredible CEO seat hijacked by silent passenger. Shocking grounding reveals hidden truth. Jordan Matthews sat in his cramped seat, the vibrations of the plane melding with the growing turmoil in his heart. It was a corporate flight, the kind that promised networking opportunities and endless praise from the ever-charismatic CEO, Sam Turner, a legend in the industry. Yet, as the world below shrunk and the clouds embraced them, unsettling whispers threaded through the cabin, pulling at his gut. He had been loyal to this company, but was he just a pawn in a game of ambition and greed? He glanced at Sam, who was engaged in effortless conversation with the other executives. The man spoke with such energy, such conviction, embodying what Jordan had always aspired to be. Yet, those ambitions seemed to fizzle under the weight of the hidden truths swirling around him. The silent passenger sitting a few rows ahead, discreet yet unnerving. With each rumor they shared, an internal alarm clanged in Jordan's mind. Do we really work hard for what we deserve? He questioned silently. The phrase echoed back memories of late nights spent processing memos and organizing conference calls. They had been sacrifices for his family, hard work rewarded by promises of corporate ascension. Yet here he was, climbing an insurmountable wall, every rung a reminder of office politics he barely grasped. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. His mind raced back to the whispered revelations. The silent passenger spoke passionately of long-buried truths, the sacrifices of colleagues, the moving of financial goalposts as the enriched executives flourished while the rest suffered. What of his mentor, the one who had shepherded him through the stormy waters of corporate navigation? Was he complicit in this injustice? That notion twisted Jordan's stomach like a vice. Each layer revealed by the passenger shed light on a murky company ethos, one built on the hard work of many but rewarded only to the privileged few. As turbulence began to jolt the aircraft, panic crept in. The plane navigated through the turbulent skies, and Jordan felt his own internal storm manifest through muscle tension and shallow breaths. In that moment, the moral quagmire in his heart solidified. Loyalty to a man who had built his empire on the backs of others versus the call for integrity and justice. What would claiming that truth cost him? With a swift lurch, the plane dipped unexpectedly, grounding him in the reality of his precarious position. The executives looked to Sam, fear reflected in their eyes, but Jordan's gaze turned inward. He bore witness to the conflict raging beneath his skin. Should he keep silent, safe in his comfort, or rise to expose the rot beneath the surface? As the plane steadied, the tension in the cabin dissipated, but the electric charge of uncertainty crackled in Jordan's chest. The descent into Chicago mirrored his own potential descent into anonymity or his heroic ascent towards challenging the status quo, and the choice loomed near, leaving his heart in a choking grip of unease. Would he find his voice to ignite change, or suffocate within the very system he longed to embrace? The answer, astonishingly close, felt impossibly elusive as the landscape of his aspirations lay uncertain in the world outside. The quiet tension lingered as the plane touched down in Chicago, wheels kissing the tarmac with a finality that felt jarring under Jordan's introspection. As the aircraft slowed to a crawl, he glanced around the cabin, absorbing the anxious faces of his fellow passengers, executives who wore success like a mantle while murmurs of discontent flickered in the corners. What stories clung to their tailored suits? How many had sacrificed their values for the illusion of advancement? The moment they disembarked, Jordan was swept into the organized chaos of the airport, people rushing, announcements echoing, and the metallic scent of anticipation permeating the air. Yet amidst the whirl, he felt grounded. Something had shifted within him. The whispered truths spun through his mind like a haunting melody, each note pressing him towards an awakening he could no longer ignore. At the hotel, amidst the polished marble and flickering chandeliers, the first gathering buzzed with excitement. Sam took center stage again, charming the crowd with tales of company victories and future conquests. Jordan's heart raced as indignation simmered in his chest. While the others laughed and cheered, he felt trapped in a gilded cage, shackled by loyalty to a man cloaked in deception. Could he challenge the narrative, rewriting the script handed to him? Discomfort laced with a newfound determination shot through him. He debated his own role in this tale. Was he merely a side character, or could he become the protagonist of his own story? Stepping away briefly, he found a quiet corner to gather his thoughts. The adrenaline surged through his veins as he embarked on a silent confrontation with his reflection. Who was he beneath the title? The diligent worker yearning for recognition, or the silent guardian of integrity who could rewrite the company's destiny? He recalled the silent passenger and their compelling words. What if he used their insight, paired with his own rising courage, as a catalyst for transformation? Those rustling whispers, now louder in his mind, urged him to act. A plan began to crystallize, its edges sharp yet daunting, to infiltrate the gilded halls not just as a participant but as a disruptor. The evening wore on as networking unfolded, but each interaction felt hollow. The smiles bore the weight of pretense, the connections forged in shadows. Jordan moved through the crowd, surveying his colleagues with keen observation. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a familiar face, his mentor, Rick, laughing at a joke that seemed out of place. Unease gripped him. What had Rick really known? Was he a mere pawn, or had he, too, turned blind to the ethical decay? Jordan's conviction intensified, solidifying into focus. The time had come to confront the complexities of both his career and his relationships. He approached Rick, heart thumping against the confines of his chest. "Can we talk?" The words came out stronger than anticipated, an invitation to challenge deeper than any superficial chatter. Rick paused, brow furrowing slightly as he nodded, motioning to a more secluded area of the ballroom. The decision looming weighed heavily on Jordan's shoulders. Would this dialogue spark a reckoning, or simply amplify his fears? As they retreated to the shadows, the present moment felt rife with potential. Jordan understood that every personal confrontation he initiated would either build walls or dismantle them. The truth simmered just beneath the surface, ready to break free. His breath was steady, clenching the edges of his resolve. There would be no retreat. As they approached a quiet spot, Jordan felt a surge of clarity. Whatever unfolded next would not only define him but would challenge the very fabric of the company he had dedicated himself to. The confrontation of his mentor loomed, echoing that wordless question: who would emerge transformed, the man seeking comfort in silence, or the one risking everything for integrity? In that electric moment, Jordan realized his true choice awaited him. Would he embrace the troubling narrative he was about to unwrap, or would fear silence his voice once again? The stakes had never felt more real, and the journey toward his awakening began now. Jordan led the way toward an unlit corner of the ballroom, the pulsating chatter from the crowd muffled by the distance. He sensed Rick's uncertainty, each step heavier with their shared history, but also shadowed by the unspoken tensions that had begun to fray their professional relationship. Would this conversation mend the rift, or deepen it? They reached a secluded alcove, the ornate decorations fading into insignificance. Jordan faced Rick, the mentor who had once been a beacon of inspiration, now a source of confusion. As Rick shifted under his scrutiny, Jordan took in the flicker of unease in his mentor's expression. With each heartbeat echoing in his ears, Jordan plunged deeper into his thoughts, preparing to unravel the truth. "Rick, do you even see what's going on?" The intensity in Jordan's voice caught his mentor off guard. "You've been here long enough to know the cost of these hollow victories." Rick's brow furrowed deeper. "What do you mean?" "We've navigated this company through tougher times. You need to trust Sam's vision." "Trust?" The word escaped Jordan's lips sharp as a blade. The familiarity of their discussion transformed into an undeniable inquisition. "Do you honestly believe that any of this is for the greater good? Look around." We're sacrificing integrity for profit. Our values are on the line. Surprised by Jordan's candor, Rick paused. His response hung in the air like smoke, dense with a history of superficial dialogues cloaked in business jargon. The moment stretched thin, like a taut wire, ready to snap. "Jordan, this business," Rick began, but Jordan interjected. "No, let us not pretend. Decisions are being made in the shadows, and you know it. You've always known." The silence thickened as Jordan's words settled. He was amplifying the internal struggle he had felt since boarding the plane, comfort versus conviction. Rick's expression softened, a flicker of recognition crossing his face, but also something darker, a hint of guilt. "I've tried to navigate the politics without being swept away," Rick admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes, it's easier to comply than to resist." "Easier? So we hide? That's not the legacy we built together." Jordan's voice surged with urgency. Their shared commitment to ethics, to shaping a workplace built on integrity, felt like a distant echo now. "Look, I don't disagree with your frustrations, but the stakes are high. Sometimes it feels like you can't see the bigger picture." Rick's defenses began to dismantle, revealing the man who had mentored him, the one who had taught him every hint of strategic prowess. "The bigger picture?" Jordan spat, emotions boiling over. "It's a picture smeared with dishonesty. Higher profits with sticky hands? What does that get us? A golden cage?" Rick hesitated, visibly torn between his loyalty to the company's leadership and his obligation to mentor a younger generation. The tension between them became palpable, a storm brewing, caught between fear of personal loss and the urgency of moral awakening. "Listen, there's more happening than you realize. If you push too hard, you'll end up regretting it," Rick cautioned, the warning ringing alarm bells within Jordan. "Regret is no longer my fear," he replied, resolute. "What I don't want is to wake up one day and realize I sold my soul for a paycheck." As the silence deepened, Jordan took in Rick's conflicted gaze, realizing that breaking the facade of their world would require more than just conviction. It would demand solidarity, risking everything together. Jordan held Rick's gaze, awaiting a signal of agreement or dissent. He knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, yet he felt the surge of possibility. If they could confront this with honesty, they could stumble toward change together. "What if we took a stand?" he suddenly asked, the thought igniting a spark. "What if we rerouted the narrative? Show others they're not alone in their dissatisfaction?" Rick's breath caught in his throat, uncertainty piercing through the shield he had constructed over the years. "You're speaking as if it's that simple. You know the risks. Are we not worth the risk?" The challenge hung between them, electric and alive. Jordan's heart raced, alive with a sense of undeniable purpose. Would this be the pivotal moment they both needed? But in that charged silence, Jordan sensed a hesitation, a potential retreat from the brink of action. He had embarked on a path he couldn't turn back from, nudging them toward a precipice of collective courage. The air felt charged, alive with tension. And then, right as Rick opened his mouth to respond, the booming voice of Sam echoed through the ballroom, calling everyone back to the main stage. Jordan felt the heavy weight of the moment, processing the choices laid before him: silence for safety, or truth for transformation. As Sam's voice rose in the background, the room dimmed, rich with unspoken possibilities. The question lingered, unyielding in its force: would they transcend their fears, or would they retreat back into the shadows, shackled by complacency? As Jordan faced Rick, everything hung in the balance, and the future crackled with uncertainty. He could feel the momentum building, yet they stood at the edge of a decision that could change not just their lives but the very fabric of the company. As the crowd began to clap and cheer at Sam's bravado, Jordan knew that the resolution to this internal conflict awaited him on the other side of complacency. Would they dare to leap into the unknown, or would inertia seal their fate once more? As the applause from the ballroom swept through him like a wave, Jordan felt an unsettling mix of exhilaration and dread. His legs wavered slightly, as if the ground beneath him was shifting. The gravity of the conversation slipped through his fingers, just as Rick's expression turned from contemplation to anxiety. Reality came flooding back, blurring the lines of their unspoken agreement. The raucous applause blended into a drumming heartbeat inside Jordan's mind. Sam's grandstanding showed no sign of abating, and he felt the room pulling at him like a magnet from which he might not escape. He needed clarity. The stakes were high, and yet the surface-level cheer from colleagues echoed an alarming disconnect from their collective ethical responsibility. "Let us regroup later," Rick murmured, turning back toward the stage. His demeanor shifted, evoking the familiar corporate stoicism that Jordan had begun to resent. "Regroup?" Jordan snapped, caution dissipating at the sight of Rick's retreat. "There's no more regrouping, Rick. This," he gestured towards the stage, "is the exact problem. We're just going to let it happen." Rick stopped short, tension radiating between them like heat from a flame. The mentor he once admired was shrinking away, a quiet surrender unraveling the threads of their professional rapport. Instinctively, Jordan felt the ground rippling beneath him, the very foundation of his belief crumbling. "Jordan, think about your position," Rick warned, the hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "This isn't simply about standing up for what's right. There are repercussions." "Repercussions?" The word dripped from Jordan's lips, laced with incredulity. "You're telling me to fear repercussions when our moral compass is spinning wildly?" The urgency surged within him, filling the void their conversation had temporarily created. The words hung between them, the cacophony from the crowd morphing into a dull roar. With each pulse of adrenaline, Jordan's clarity sharpened. What if he truly challenged everything they had accepted as the norm? What if this was the moment he shifted the narrative instead of just talking about it? "Jordan, please," Rick began again, but Jordan couldn't afford any more distractions. The weight of the moment pressed down, igniting a flicker of defiance within him. "I won't be scared into silence," he declared, each word a building block of determination. "I'm not willing to let this company degrade into something it was never meant to be, and neither should you." Rick's eyes darkened, and Jordan could see the wheels in his mentor's head turning. Deep-seated loyalty wrestled with self-preservation, and it made him vulnerable. "Tell me," Jordan pressed, his voice now low and intense, "how many of our colleagues feel the same? How many don't speak up for fear of losing everything? Isn't that worth fighting for?" The time for action was now, the urgency clawing at the back of Jordan's mind, pushing him toward an undeniable pivot. Desire for change surged as he envisioned a pathway of integrity for the company, one that also channeled his aspirations of being not just a participant in the system, but a catalyst for transformation. "This isn't just about being right," Jordan continued, "it's about leading by example. And if we have to push back against Sam, then that's what we shall do." The conflict in Rick's expression turned palpable. It was the moment of reckoning. Jordan's heart raced, a mixture of fear and determination clashing within him. The question remained, would Rick join him in this fight? Or would he retreat, leaving Jordan to challenge the status quo alone? As Rick glanced back at the stage, the cheers crescendoing, the choice lay before them. Would he stand in solidarity or retreat into the shadows of doubt? Jordan's resolve thrummed beneath the surface, waiting for an affirmation that could transform everything, the lifeblood of a turning tide. In this pivotal moment, the future felt precariously balanced, precariously close. "I can't do this alone, Rick," he urged, desperation lacing his plea. "You've taught me to value integrity above all. Help me make this stand." For a heartbeat, Jordan waited like a coiled spring, poised for potential. Would Rick's answer hold the power to ignite a shift within the corporate structure? The choice hung in the air like tension on a stretch of wire. And as silence fell, the answer awaited them, waiting to unravel the threads of complacency or to reinforce a cage of fear. What lay ahead was as uncertain as it was promising, because this moment could either fortify Jordan's resolve or fracture his dreams. Jordan's heart thundered in his chest as he awaited Rick's response. Each tick of time felt like a countdown to a revelation that would either fill him with newfound courage or crush his spirit under the weight of defeat. The room around them began to fade, the atmosphere charged with tension, isolating the two men from the encroaching cheers of the audience. "Look, Jordan," Rick finally said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "I understand your passion, but you're asking a lot. This isn't just about truth-telling. It's about careers, families' careers built on deception," Jordan interjected, his frustration mounting. "How can we stand by when we know the impact of our choices? What about our integrity? Isn't that worth more than the comfort of a paycheck?" Rick's jaw clenched, a flicker of recognition crossing his features as if he were wrestling with a deep-seated truth. In that heated exchange, Jordan saw a glimmer of the mentor he once respected, battling a current of disillusionment. It ignited a spark within him, a willingness to push through the defensive barriers. "Every day we allow this culture to persist, we contribute to the erosion of values that brought us here in the first place," he continued, pressing on. "I refuse to be a part of it anymore. It's time to choose whose side I'm on." Silence fell heavily over Rick, an internal war raging behind his calm exterior. Jordan could almost hear Rick's thoughts ticking away like the clock that measured the potential turning point. The weight of accumulated regrets clung to Rick's shoulders, and for the first time in months, Jordan could empathize with his mentor. But he couldn't afford sympathy anymore, he needed decisive action. "I'm willing to face the consequences, whatever they may be," Jordan urged, desperation giving way to a newfound determination. "But I need you, Rick. I need your experience, your support. Otherwise, I'm stepping into the void alone." Rick's fingers drummed restlessly against his side. The moment stretched, and doubt loomed like an uninvited specter. What if he could sway Rick's decision? What if he could spark a movement that would ripple through their company? Would Rick become a willing ally or remain locked in his defensive mode that had protected him thus far? "Think of the ripple effect," Jordan pressed, his mind racing with visions of what could emerge from standing against the tide. "If we could redefine what's possible here, we could inspire others to find their voice. If enough of us push back, eventually the currents will have to change." Rick's gaze shifted, distant yet probing, as if recalling memories of better days when integrity steered their decisions. Then, slowly, a conflict unfurled behind his eyes, a battle between fear and a flickering hope for redemption. Jordan felt fragile yet steadfast, rooted in his convictions. He had spent too long residing in the margins of corporate complacency. The path ahead felt daunting but necessary. Finally, Rick sighed, shoulders releasing some of their tension. "You're right, Jordan. Much more is at stake here than I'd like to admit. It's time we set an example. I'll support you." Relief surged through Jordan, accompanied by a bittersweet dread. Their resolve now intertwined, they stood on the precipice between compliance and confrontation. The applause resumed, but for the first time, Jordan heard the crowd's thunderous claps as taunts rather than praise, a strange juxtaposition that filled him with new resolve. This was their chance, the beginning of something transformative. They would be voices against the raging tide. But as the gravity of their decisions sunk in, a flicker of fear nestled in his gut. What would their stand provoke beyond the boardroom? What unseen forces would they awaken, and what repercussions would follow? Would the walls they worked to uphold simply crumble away beneath them? "Let us meet tomorrow." "We need a plan," Rick suggested, tension easing into a focused determination. Jordan nodded, excitement rippling through him. He could feel it, the change that was possible, the leadership he had always aspired to bring to life. This was the push he needed, a step toward his reinvention from silent observer to courageous participant. As they parted ways, Jordan's mind buzzed with endless possibilities, curiosity mingled with the weight of their impending choices. He had ignited a fire, but he needed to nurture it carefully, lest it consume him in the process. What lay around the corner was uncharted territory, and as he ventured into the unknown, a familiar question haunted him: how far was he willing to go to uphold the integrity that had been so easily tarnished? He took a breath, determination solidifying. It was time to shape not only his destiny but the destiny of those who would follow. Yet within that certainty, shadows whispered of the potential consequences awaiting beneath the surface. Tomorrow would not just be another day. It would be a day of reckoning. And with it came a harrowing thought: where did loyalty end, and personal sacrifice begin? As dawn broke, Jordan awoke with a sense of urgency igniting his senses. The early light seeped through the blinds, casting a latticework of shadows across his room. Today was not just another day, it was the beginning of a new path, a crossroad where decisions would shape not just his future, but the company's very essence. He jumped out of bed, a fire of determination igniting within him. As he stood before the mirror, the reflection staring back bore lines of uncertainty and fierce resolve. He wasn't the same Jordan who had walked into the office weeks ago, paralyzed by fear and indecision. No, today he was a tempest, steeled by purpose. Out in the corporate world, the routines of a bustling morning rang hollow against the chaotic barrage of thoughts filling his mind. He spotted old colleagues with their familiar faces, their complacency becoming more pronounced in stark contrast to his newfound awakening. Had he really been a part of this world, one defined by convenience over truth? The bitterness of that realization gnawed at him as he navigated through the sea of distractions in the office. He found himself stationed at their usual meeting room, where Rick would soon arrive. With every tick of the clock, anticipation coiled around his heart. How would their conversation unfold? What strategies would they devise to stand against the tidal wave of mediocrity? Jordan ran through the potential scenarios in his mind, weighing the risks against the potential victories. When Rick arrived, his demeanor was noticeably different. There was a glint of cautious enthusiasm in his eyes, an ember of possibility sparked by their earlier exchange. "Jordan," he greeted, settling into his chair. "We need to talk about how we'll approach this. It's not going to be easy." "Agreed," Jordan said, leaning forward. "I've been thinking about the power of transparency and the kind of message we want to send. We must define our stance before taking action. It's about more than just us." The conversation pivoted quickly as they delved into a brainstorming session rich with ideas. Jordan felt exhilarated as they mapped out a plan of attack, focusing on how best to resonate with their colleagues. They needed to evolve the dialogue around integrity, pushing for honesty, and aligning their mission with their core values. But behind the excitement loomed the specter of potential backlash, mockery from superiors, isolation from peers, and the very real possibility of professional wreckage. "Are we ready for the consequences?" Rick asked, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. The vulnerability in his voice reminded Jordan that fear was a human constant, one for which he was still unpracticed in defiance. "We have to be," Jordan responded, his own gaze turning steely. "It's about what we stand to gain, not just what we might lose. Real change doesn't come without sacrifice. I believe in this, Rick. I really do." As they outlined their strategy, a sense of solidarity bloomed between them. This wasn't just a confrontational act, it was a catalyst for change, and it began with them. With every point discussed, Jordan's confidence solidified, revealing latent capabilities he hadn't known existed. Yet, beneath the surface of their enthusiastic discussions, a chilling thought gripped him: would their actions provoke the higher-ups? What would happen if the repercussions went as far as retrenchment or worse? The looming possibility sat heavy within him, a dark mirror reflecting the doubts that still lingered. If they positioned themselves as disruptors, how would they navigate the correlating fallout? The team's dynamics might shift, and those once supportive could become unyielding adversaries. As the clock ticked on, a dawning realization settled: Jordan was no longer only risking his standing but also testing the very loyalty of those around him. The stakes were raised, and he couldn't shy away from the potential turbulence. "I can't shake the feeling there's something more at stake here, something inside me like a tethered inner force wanting to break free," he confessed, his voice low and contemplative. Rick paused, meeting his gaze, and a glimmer of their mutual understanding passed silently. Whatever that is, harness it. We're about to turn the tide or drown trying. Steeling himself, Jordan ventured, this is it then, we must own our truth. Are we prepared to confront the dragons ahead? As the meeting closed with a sense of empowerment, he could hardly believe how far he'd come in such a short time. Yet beneath that achievement roiled uncertainty, a realization layered with potent fear and exhilarating possibility. Little did he know, the corporate dragons loomed larger than anticipated. As their meeting adjourned, a name echoed ominously in his mind: Monique, the formidable chief operating officer known for her no-nonsense approach. What would her reaction be to their shift? Tomorrow, curiosity melded with anxiety. What awaited him in an encounter that could either galvanize their mission or shatter their aspirations? The following morning, the atmosphere within the office felt electric. A tight coil of expectation wound tightly around Jordan's chest as he paced through the corridor. He intermittently glanced at the fresh presentations scattered on desks, remnants of the old order, and instinctively felt their irrelevance. No one understood the storm brewing within him, nor did they sense the shift on the horizon. Approaching Monique's office felt like navigating a minefield. Each step echoed, amplifying his uncertainty. He rehearsed their potential conversation in his mind, anticipating her piercing gaze and incisive questions. Monique, a figure of authority steeped in ruthless pragmatism, was not one to be trifled with. He thought of her track record, her willingness to smother dissent with calculated efficiency. Jordan, he murmured to himself, forcing confidence into his stride. Remember why you're here. Rick's words lingered, solidifying into a mantra. Whatever that inner force was, he needed to harness it. He pushed the door to Monique's office open and stepped inside, the space stark and imposing. Jordan, she acknowledged without looking up, a pen gliding across a report. What can I do for you? Drawing a steady breath, he replied, I'd like to discuss our current strategies and potential shifts in our focus. At his mention of shifts, her head snapped up, eyes narrowing, weighing his intentions. I hope you're not implying we veer away from established protocols. Innovation is not an excuse for recklessness, she warned, her tone firm but intrigued. No, not at all, he responded quickly, I believe we can innovate while reinforcing our commitments to integrity and transparency. Monique leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, assessing him with skepticism. People are comfortable with the current framework, Jordan. Messing with that could lead to backlash. Are you prepared to face ruffled feathers? Absolutely, he asserted, a newfound assertiveness flooding him with clarity. But staying complacent is not an option. Our industry is evolving, we must evolve with it, or risk obsolescence. A charged silence filled the air. In that moment, Jordan realized he was standing before her not just as an employee but as a challenger. His heart pounded, sensing the seismic shifts he initiated with his words. Monique's demeanor darkened slightly, her eyes were sharp, flicking over him as if weighing both respect and resentment. You've gained some boldness overnight, haven't you? Jordan swallowed hard. It's more about embracing a necessary change for our future, Monique. It's about investing in our values. You think a shift in values will be well received? She questioned, eyebrows raised, encouraging him to delve deeper. The board might not share your vision. This isn't just about ideals, it's about profits. The two aren't mutually exclusive, he countered, his voice steady. If we redefine our mission, we engage not just with our clients but with our staff. That's how you build loyalty and, ultimately, profitability. She considered this, a hint of intrigue surfacing amidst her scrutinizing gaze. Was this a flicker of respect he sensed, or merely an inflection of amusement? He couldn't tell. But he pressed on, bolstered by something he recognized as an unwavering commitment to his vision. Jordan, if you're throwing this gauntlet down, you best be prepared for the consequences. I want to shield you from anything that might come as a result, she warned, her eyes piercing into his. The board will expect results. Jordan nodded, determination solidifying in the face of her skepticism. I'm prepared to lead this charge, with Rick's support and the team's contributions. We are ready to navigate whatever challenges arise. As the discussion deepened, he realized the complexity of the situation. This wasn't simply about proposing new ideas, it was about confronting Monique, reshaping his narrative from a passive participant into a leader ready to face the backlash of his choices. He could sense that this meeting was pivotal. It felt like a siege on his normalcy, each exchange of dialogue forging a metal band around his resolve. He felt empowered, but uncertainty lurked, the prospect of failure was intoxicatingly vivid. Monique finally leaned forward, her interest piqued. There's a fire in you, Jordan. But know this: you're about to step into a battlefield, and the stakes are high. Can you afford to lose? Emboldened yet aware of the challenge, he responded, if losing means standing for something bigger than myself, then yes, I can. Their gazes locked in a moment suspended in time, one crafted from assertiveness, challenge, and burgeoning respect. As he left the office, invigorated yet apprehensive, Jordan realized that he had crossed a threshold. He had revealed a side of himself, one that craved authenticity and depth, despite a landscape filled with treachery. But with new determination often comes unforeseen obstacles. He would soon discover that Monique was only the first layer in a much thicker skin of corporate resistance. The real test loomed within the upcoming board meeting, where silent passengers of doubt and fear would reveal themselves. Could he navigate through their turbulence, or would his rising tide sink beneath the surface? Tomorrow would tell a deeper story, the stage set for a confrontation that would redefine everything. Jordan awoke the next morning before dawn, the weight of the day ahead pressing heavily on his chest. He sat up in bed, glancing at the stacks of notes lined along his desk, ideas, strategies, and visions that danced just beyond his reach. The upcoming board meeting was not merely a presentation, it was a battleground where his boldness would be tested against the entrenched interests of seasoned executives who thrived in the comfort of convention. As he prepared for the day, he felt each routine task showering, getting dressed as a warm-up for what was to come. The image in the mirror, scruffy yet striving, reflected not just his physical state but hinted at a rawness within that begged for expression. He was on the edge of something transformative, but the journey from here to the boardroom was fraught with peril. The office was eerily quiet when he arrived, the hum of the usual early morning clatter noticeably absent. Distant cubicles were ghosts today, signifying a collective anticipation that left the air stale. An email from Rick popped up on his phone, reminding him of the core message they intended to convey: Jordan, remember your vision is not just for you but for all of us. Moments later, rehearsing his pitch silently, he turned the corner toward the conference room. Each footfall echoed in his mind, conjuring images of Monique's scrutiny, the board members' blank stares, and the collective judgment that would follow. What if they dismissed him outright? What if his vision was mocked? The questions loomed large, but he clenched his fists, reminding himself of his purpose: no growth comes without discomfort. When the meeting began, the room slowly filled with figures he recognized but had not fully engaged in conversation before. His colleagues turned competitors, allies turned skeptics. Chairs creaked, hands shuffled papers, and the tension was palpable. Monique's presence was magnetic, her authority both a cloak and a dagger that could shield him or pierce through his confidence. Jordan stood at the front, his heart racing as he laid out the foundation of his vision, a renewed commitment to innovation grounded in the company's core values. The slide with the title Passion and Profit, a new era flickered on the screen behind him, and he felt a thrill rush through him. He explained how shifting the company's focus could bring about not just financial stability, but a deep, resonant loyalty from both employees and clients who yearned for authenticity in a rapidly changing landscape. But as he spoke, he noticed the subtle exchanges: raised eyebrows, whispered comments, and Monique's stern gaze never straying from him. Each nod of the board members seemed to slice at his confidence, as if they were measuring his ambition against their years of experience. The dismissive tones of their rebuttals reflected a struggle he had not considered. Entrenched interests do not yield easily. Despite the mounting tension, he dug deeper, inviting dialogue and concern. "What are your fears about this change?" he asked, surprised by his own vulnerability. A senior board member responded, "A shift in values without immediate results could cost us everything." The challenge struck a chord, forcing him to confront the very essence of his conviction. But what if missing out on change costs us our future? The consequences of stagnation could be far more damaging. The room hushed momentarily, the gravity of his words settling over them like a dense fog. As conversations erupted, doubts were voiced and countered, leaving behind an unsettling air that felt heavy and asphyxiating. Here, in the thick of battle, Jordan realized he was not just defending a vision, he was learning about negotiation, persuasion, the art of resilience forged in the fires of dissent. But the deeper revelation struck him in a flash: this was more than professional growth. It was a chance to understand his own leadership style, to see how he reacted to pressure, how he could galvanize support or risk alienation. This confrontation was a reflection not just of his capabilities but his commitment to his values, the very core of who he was becoming. The room was a battleground, and as debates raged, challenges mounted, and a simmering tension filled the air, Jordan felt alive. Tomorrow was a new horizon, but first, he needed to navigate the battlefield ahead. With the momentum shifting, he sensed a familiar thrill, a primal instinct interwoven with his determination to not just survive but triumph. Little did he know, the board meeting was only the precursor to a looming confrontation that would rock the very foundation of his aspirations. What awaited him at the conclusion of this clash, he couldn't yet fathom. The aftermath of the meeting left Jordan buzzing with adrenaline, yet a gnawing anxiety coiled in his gut. He could feel the uncertainty of the board members like a faint echo, a lingering reminder that change wasn't just resisted, it was feared. The questions that loomed during his presentation now morphed into an insistent chorus, disrupting his thoughts. Did he truly possess the persuasive power to shift minds hardened by years of adherence to the status quo? Back at his desk, he picked through the fragmented notes that had once felt promising. They now appeared scattered and confused, much like his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that washed over him. While he had invited opposition, had he assumed too much? Could he lead a team when half of them seemed poised to sabotage his vision? Doubt seeped into his resolve, pricking at the edges of his determination with each breath. The next day brought a scheduled one-on-one with Monique. The atmosphere was heavy as Jordan entered her office. She was known for her sharp intellect and an unyielding praise for tradition, often reinforcing the pillars of the business. Yet, it was her challenging demeanor that kept newcomers at a safe distance. As she gestured for him to sit, he felt the gravity of the conversation that lay ahead. "Jordan," she began, her tone measured, "I appreciate your passion. But passion isn't enough in a room full of skeptics. You must prepare for every counterargument as if you were fighting for your life." The intensity of her gaze pinned him down. He nodded, barely suppressing a twinge of resentment. Was it truly a fight? Instinctively, he pressed back, "I understand, Monique, but our current trajectory threatens our relevance. We might be fighting against ourselves more than anything else." That was it. Jordan felt a flicker of courage as he stood his ground. This was no longer just about presenting a vision, it was about embracing a confrontation that he had shied away from in the past. What if he were to challenge her narrative instead of merely responding to it? Monique's expression softened briefly, a crack in her tough exterior, and for a moment, he thought he caught a glimpse of respect. "Your drive is commendable. But know that I will be watching closely. If you slip, it won't just be your vision on the line. It's your career." Her statement hung thick in the air, sending a shiver down his spine. That exchange ignited an unforeseen flame within him. He walked away feeling renewed, his thoughts forming a strategy that blurred the lines between aggression and diplomacy. What did Monique fear? What might persuade not just her, but the others? A new conference date loomed, and he resolved to craft not only a compelling narrative but also a steadfast coalition among his peers, a team forged through mutual vulnerabilities and aspirations. During that weekend, he called an informal gathering, a chance to share ideas and concerns with those who aligned with his intent. Each interaction felt electric, building a camaraderie that was absent before. They shared lunch filled with laughter, storytelling, and hints of what could be. Ideas sparked like fireworks, igniting his enthusiasm. As he planted the seeds of collaboration, he realized that this might be the foundation for a revolution rooted in collective ambition rather than singular authority. As the date for the next board meeting crept closer, Jordan's previously simmering doubts transformed into affirmation. The path forward held promise not just for himself, but for the company. Yet, as he prepared to emulate this newfound confidence, something dark flickered. A rumor had reached him, a whisper of discontent growing among the executive ranks. He was now not just a dreamer, the battleground was widening. How would he command his footing now that the shadows were plotting against him? The moment of reckoning was approaching, and Jordan's development would navigate unfamiliar terrain. More than just an internal battle, a conspiracy threatened everything he had organized. There was no turning back now. He had to confront the shadows before they engulfed him. What lay hidden beneath the surface would soon be revealed, testing not just his vision, but his very essence as a leader. As the sun broke through the clouds, pouring warmth into the conference room, Jordan felt a transformative light illuminating his resolve. He was no longer wrestling with self-doubt but harnessing a powerful clarity that coursed through him like electricity. He stood at the precipice of a pivotal moment, no longer merely striving to be accepted, but intent on achieving real change, for himself and for those who shared his passion. The air buzzed with tension as he entered the boardroom. The faces of his colleagues were a tapestry of skepticism, some looming in the shadows of McCarthy-style doubts, while others reflected a flicker of hope ignited by their recent discussions. Monique took her place at the head of the table, casting him a knowing glance, a silent challenge etched across her features. He recognized that this moment was more than just a meeting, it was the culmination of all the transformative conversations and rehearsals he had engaged in since his flight, evolving him from a passive observer into an active participant who would no longer be silenced. Jordan began his presentation, speaking not just with conviction but with a newfound authority. The room quieted, hanging on every word as he laid out the possibilities. He framed the upcoming business strategy not as a deviation from their core values but as a reaffirmation, a path towards profitability through ethical engagement, transparency, and innovation rooted in inclusivity. What I propose, he asserted, isn't simply about profits or loss. It's a revival of our allegiance to the principles on which this company was built. We can harness passion without sacrificing our integrity. If we choose to actively engage the talents of our employees, we will not only see financial returns but a loyalty that generates a resilient company culture. His passion grew palpable, stirring the air thick with enthusiasm. The board members leaned in closer, their expressions shifted from passive observers to intrigued interlocutors. Monique's sharp gaze softened as she followed his words, a reluctant recognition beginning to emerge in her demeanor. Imagine this. An organization where every employee feels a sense of belonging, leading to increased investment in their work and, ultimately, our company's success, he continued, shaping vivid pictures that illustrated his radical vision. With each depicted scenario, he saw the flickers of recognition blossom, a universal language flashing between their shared aspirations and the possibility of a renewed commitment. The dialogue that ensued transcended mere debate, it transformed into collaborative brainstorming, pushing boundaries that had once felt unyielding. Jordan's fellow executives began to voice their concerns and contribute ideas, weaving their collective intellect into a fabric of excitement that enshrouded the room. As the dialogue continued, Jordan shared the stories of his colleagues' voices previously set aside in the name of corporate decorum. He embraced empowerment over entitlement, solidifying a burgeoning camaraderie among him and the board. "Jordan, I must say," Monique interjected, her candidness refreshing, "this new direction could actually pivot us away from the stagnation we've observed in recent quarters." But it requires your assurance that you're prepared to implement this vision decisively. Can we count on you to hold firm? Her question lingered, electrifying the atmosphere with anticipation. This was the moment he had resolved to confront the assurance not just of a board but of himself. He met her gaze, unwavering and fortified by the challenges he'd endured. "I'm ready, Monique. But I need your support too. This isn't just about me, it requires a collective effort. I believe in our people. Let us lead together into this new era." A ripple of agreement swept through the executives, a consensus forming in the wake of his passionate plea. Together, they collaborated on initiatives poised to empower employees, from inclusive decision-making processes to enhanced training opportunities. Celebrating innovation. Wouldn't just be a buzzword, it would be the new heartbeat of their company. Days turned into weeks as Jordan's vision began to manifest into actionable plan strategy sessions fused with a fresh energy of solidarity coursing through the ranks. The support he roused wasn't without resistance, but rather than unravel him, it cultivated his strength. His confidence solidified into a recognized competence, making him not only a participant but a leader deeply respected by peers. The final redirection came during a quarterly presentation. As Jordan stood before the restless board and their scrutinizing gazes, he unveiled the tangible results of their reimagined strategies. Confidence exuded from him as he detailed the growth in employee engagement and morale, the metrics demonstrating an organic shift he had envisioned. As the numbers illuminated the screen, applause erupted, a thunderous affirmation echoing throughout the conference hall. He could hardly contain the swell of pride within him. A culmination of challenges had birthed clarity, transforming him from a hesitant employee grappling with doubt to a recognized leader, a beacon of integrity and resolve. The whispers of discontent had faded, replaced by a symphony of voices eager to contribute to the positive landscape they were forging. In that moment, Jordan understood that the journey was no longer about changing a company but redefining what leadership meant to him, aligning action with aspiration. As he exited the boardroom, newfound clarity glimmered in his gaze. Jordan Matthews had conquered not just the challenges of the corporate world, but the demons of apprehension and self-doubt. He proved not only to himself but to everyone around him that vulnerability could lead to valor and that authenticity was the cornerstone of enduring success. With each step, he felt the solid ground beneath him. And as he navigated through the bustling office, a certain truth sprouted within him: he had built a platform of integrity, and now he would stand steadfast upon it. This was the moment he had transformed, the moment he would not only inspire change but embody it. Today was not just a day. It was the beginning of a legacy, a journey defined by overcame adversity, integrity embraced, and a vision realized. A legacy challenging others to rise, as he did, and fight for more than just survival, to genuinely thrive. And amidst the echoes of success, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps all his fears had merely been stepping stones for a greater purpose. He had reconciled the silent passengers in his life not with expulsion, but through courageous dialogue, allowing their whispers to guide him towards extraordinary transformations. If ever there was a call to action urging the audience to take part in transformative journeys, this was the moment. You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding of stunning stories of personal evolution. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring more souls can discover the courage hidden within themselves. Comment your reactions and theories about the journey you've witnessed. Let us spark a conversation of change. And above all, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for stories of growth and resilience. Don't wait even one more second to share and uplift others.